SpectreVision Radio.
Hello and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, where we listen to people's fairy encounters. But take heed, we're not talking about winged Tinkerbells here. These are real fairies, real encounters that took people like you and I by surprise. Stay a while and hear their stories. My name is Jo Hickey Hall, and I'm a folklore researcher. Hello everybody and welcome to the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast. I'm Jo Hickey Hall and my guest this time is Ishtar Howell. And Ishtar is a yogi, monk, meditation teacher, an astrologer and gardener, as you just described yourself to me, which I think is a really, those last three, I love the idea that, that is what you would live your life by: meditation, teaching, astrology and gardening. So welcome. Really nice to have you.
Thank you. Oh, it's wonderful to be here. And as you know, I'm a fan of the show. So
thank you very much. Well, because I reached out to you after seeing your interview about the jaguar elemental, and it blew my mind, and I just thought I really have to reach out to you. And then it so happened that you were kind of aware of what I was doing too, so it's always lovely when that happens, isn't it? That
yes, it is.
So, and we've been in touch since, and you're one of these people that have been experiencing the other world since you were a small child, and that really resonates with me and with many of the other people that I speak to. We tend to find that we've always been in touch with that world. It's just kind of part and parcel of our lives and how we are. So what I do know about your life is that from an early age, you were kind of resourcing yourself. It's about making your bedroom into an ashram. And so I'd love to hear about how things began for you. Even before that, you'd had these early experiences. So could you talk a little about that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I think a number of your guests, ghosts were part of it. That was, and I think looking back, I think it was actually a fine training ground in many ways. It wasn't something I was seeking. It was something that seemingly I had to respond to and in the best way that I could. But one of my first memories was sitting in my crib, and this was before I could talk. I remember I wasn't speaking yet, and before I learned how to escape my crib onto the floor. So I hadn't quite gotten the strength to get over the bars yet. And so I was sitting there one morning, very early morning. I used to get up maybe at 4 or 5 and just sit there and wait for the sun to come out. And then my mom would come in because she used my room as an additional closet, the closet. And then only this lady in a blue nightgown with curly white hair and a strange blue glow all around her. I'd never seen that at a person yet, like a complete blue light glow all around a person. She had hair like the grandmother I knew, but she was much shorter than my grandmother. And so when I was used to having people come into my room and sleep in the bed, and then this lady just came and walked by, and she didn't look at me, which was strange, but I felt her regard toward me. And I wasn't afraid at all. In fact, I felt quite appreciated, in a sense. I felt cared for by this new adult who was entering the room, and I just watched her. And then she walked clean out the back wall of my room, and I'd never seen anybody walk through a wall before. So I really noted that. I was like, okay, nobody's ever done that yet. And I remember thinking like I would like to walk through a wall someday. And I never saw this lady come into my room again. And then it would have been probably a couple years later when I was looking at a family picture album with my mother that the woman in that same nightgown with a little, which was blue with kind of like some kind of paisley design or something, and white, kind of a white lacy type collar, was in a picture. And it was my great grandmother who had died 1 year, maybe 1.5 years before I was born.
Mm.
And then my mother said, "Oh, your great grandmother would have loved you. I have a feeling you two would be two peas in a pod. Too bad you didn't get to meet her." And so that was actually a very good positive experience to kick off what would kind of become a little bit nerve-wracking. And so it became common to wake up and have somebody standing in the room, 5 feet away, 6 feet away. Mostly they seemed to master some respect, not to just like loom over my body or something like that, which is seeing all the films. And then I would I would engage in impromptu conversation with them. And what I mean by that is that I would be dispensing them advice that I think was a bit precocious and beyond what I should have known as a 3 or 4 year old. Terminology would come out telepathically, and I would give them really kind of like professional instructions on what they need to do, as if I was the person who was kind of leading the interaction. And so you have this little 3 or 4 year old and these, I don't know, dead 50-year-olds with coming with bundles of feelings that honestly were just not necessarily comfortable for a 4 year old to deal with. So I was learning how to be a psychiatrist in a way, or psychologist in a sense, and learning how to, kind of see through a lot of the things that would have seemed scary.
Yeah.
And some of the people who seemed like they were violent people in their life, and they were afraid from their violence. But the first thing I picked up was not that they were looking for repentance. I would pick up that, the sense of how nasty they were.
Mm.
But then I had to learn how to sort of like absorb that, deflect it, and then see through it and see right to their, who they really were and what are we doing here? Let's get to the point. Okay, I'm going to move you on. So I would start to, I wasn't taught this. I didn't develop this, but when it would come time, I would close my eyes and I would breathe in a certain way, and I would find myself going back into this big, big, vast, brighter than bright space. And I would go there, and somehow, like, I don't know if it wasn't really me doing it, that would project through me and kind of go into the space in between us. And at a certain point, I would feel in my body like like this whoosh and a release of tension in the room, and a very kind of like cleanly feeling to everything. And then I would open my eyes and they'd be gone. And so, this went on many times. I thought, and this is probably helpful, that I thought it was my imagination. Because my mother said, "Oh," I was praised by my mother, like, "Oh, he's got a good imagination." So imagination equaled to a positive thing. And so, they weren't necessarily believers in the supernatural in my house, but they definitely prized people with the ability of imagination. So I think that made it safe for me to a certain extent. Although in a way, I was like, "No, I think this shit's real." On the other hand.
But it's encouraging, isn't it? It's having the encouragement that you maybe can lean into something if you feel that it's, not if it's not shut down, or you're being told that it's wrong, or
yes,
or whatever, some kind of judgment on it. So can I just be clear then? So these people had passed over. Do you think that they were from your local community, or
many?
Right.
Yeah. In fact, sometimes they'd come home. They'd come home with me, and I do from whence they'd come.
Right. So you'd be out, and I've heard people describe this kind of way of being as almost like sort of being a beacon.
Yes.
For people that are passed over, and they will gravitate towards your energy.
Absolutely. I think there were some spirits that were in my house, homebound. I didn't get along well with those, and I think I exiled them in a way to the basement. In a way, we I was a bit pugilistic as well with some.
Do you think
So
that there was something about where you were living as well? Was there anything about the location that your house was on, or what was near it?
potentially, my sister and I researched this stuff, on the microfilm at the library because she had experiences too. We didn't actually compare our notes that much until much later, but she two water signs. She was older than me by 6.5 years, but two kind of sensitive kids in the same house. And we couldn't find any newspaper reports or anything of violent deaths or burial grounds or anything like that. We were so I'm not sure why. But actually in my town there are a lot of haunted houses.
Right.
More conspicuously haunted than ours. We grew up in a little town that in the 19th century, on one hand became a place where the wealthy of Chicago built giant sprawling mansions around around the lake.
Uh,
That was the center of town. On two, in the 19th century, lots of sanatoriums were built in our town, and they were doing rather unfortunate treatments on the patients there. And a lot of the sanatoriums were reverted back to Victorian houses after they were done big sanatoriums and people lived in them. So the whole house, I think, is the whole town has a certain kind of a haunted presence to it.
Very much so. That's really interesting. I think maybe even the lake itself being.
Oh yeah, it was. Of course, it was a very venerated lake to the Potawatomi tribe, who were the original inhabitants. We used to have glorious earthen mounds that you find in North America that unfortunately the settlers plowed through, but they were in very important places right next to the lake. And I also think our town was a hub of the spiritualist movement as well. I mean, maybe not like so much like Lilydale or a place like that in New York, but there's plenty of seances going on in Little Lake Geneva in the 1870s and 80s.
This July, Modern Fairy Sightings and House of Zophiel bring you a weekend immersed in the world of fairies. I'll be part of a residential weekend workshop with spaces to share our personal experiences, meditations to connect with other worlds, exploring encounters and literature, painting and drawing, and creating a talisman. At each stage, we'll be exploring our deep connection with nature, listening to our intuition and the messages received. We'll be leaning into the other world and inviting contact. That's 5th and 6th of July in Sheffield. To reserve a space and for more information, email info@houseofzophiel.com, ZOPHIEL, or check out scarletofthefae.com and go to events. Join us. Amazing. Yeah, sounds a very liminal place then. A place, yeah. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that this is where you were born, chose to be born, and then you have all this going on as a young child.
Yeah, I mean, I lived also a block from a really old Civil War cemetery as well,
Right.
and older, and that's where I went to nursery school. Was the church building right next to that cemetery, and it was maybe a 500-foot walk for me, or no, it'd be like 200 feet. God, it was that close. A 200-foot walk from my front door to the. Actually, that church building was a bit haunted too. When they would put us down for naps on our little mats in the half basement. I mean, I wasn't liking to take naps, so I would like fake it. But I remember like opening my eyes, thinking I'd see one of the living daycare attendants, and instead I see somebody in much older clothing, just kind of walking through, as if she's still like working for the church, doing the same thing. And I never saw her again, nor did I feel afraid for that lady. She had a good vibe about her, but not a menacing vibe, at least. So this became a little bit of a problem, the beacon thing. I intuitively knew that I was, perhaps my sister as well, I'd have to say, and maybe we're functioning as beacons to the local astral fauna, and the denizens of the astral, I should say. And So one night I had a really, I'll say, a dark entity. I don't know if I would use the word demon. I'm not entirely. I keep an open taxonomy here, but anyways, it actually looked like and felt like a Dementor from the Harry Potter films, and this was years before those books came out, and it was just sort of sucking the life out of me, and it was I woke up in a sleep paralysis state, but then I fought through it, and I was sitting up, and I was still feeling it, coming at me, and I could see it, and it kept getting closer to me. It was sort of pitch black, and it seemed to be made out of fear, in a way. That's and then, but thankfully, some voice from my heart, like a very strong, quiet, silent voice just gave me the instructions. Oh, just open into total love, and I wouldn't have expected myself to be able to carry out those instructions, but somehow just hearing that voice in some way had the instruction and gave me the ability. So I did it. I opened into to total love and let it like beam through me, and that turned sort of the tables on this being. It became suddenly incredibly scared of me, and it ran out of my room, and I was saying like, "Hey, come back!" like, uh, and so that I did that. So then about a year after that, um, another being that looked and felt similar to it came into my room, and I was about to do the whole thing that I was instructed, and then said, I come in peace, basically. And I said, "Hey, well, what do you want?" And he said, "Look, well, I was told, one of my kind," is how they put it. One of my kind said, you're a guy who could help me." And I said, "Well, what do you want? What do you need?" And it basically said, I want to incarnate as a human being, and I need to work some stuff off."
Mhm.
I said, "Oh yeah, I can." Without a beat, I was like, "Yeah, I can offer you a job, and that'll work, function in that way. So what I'd like you to do is, I need you to be my bouncer, and I want you to basically stand by the door, and only admit one spirit at a time. Maybe allow me to have some sleeping hours, because I'd like not to be, screwed around with at 3 in the morning, or whatever. I'm a school child. I have to, I have to go to school in the morning, and just make sure only one comes in at a time, and they have to have the right intentions. They have to be ready to transition. Can you do that?" So absolutely, they said. And I was like, "This guy's great, because he's so damn scary. Like the scariest ghost would be scary." Because I figured he's a demon, basically. And I said, "Okay, demon, we got a contract. You do. We have a deal." And so things shifted after that. That it was sort of an orderly one at a time thing. I also had an obsession with Sherlock Holmes at the time, especially the Jeremy Brett series in the 80s.
Yeah, yeah.
And I had a hat and a little pipe, and I turned my room into, my best as I could do with a no money budget, a Victorian consulting detective's office, where my clients, I would help them transition to the next life, and that would be my service, and that. And so I'd sit in my rocking chair, and they'd sit in a chair across from me, and this is how we would do it. Very theatrical, help me, I think, have a sense of control. So we did that.
How old were you? How old were you at that point?
Oh, I was like 7.
Right.
Yeah, I guess 7, 8. It was 90, 91, somewhere in those 2 years. So yeah, that being was. I thought like, oh, I'm imagining it. I had like one friend who had a sleepover with me one night, and she came to me. He's like, "Tom, like, there's a guy by the door. It's fucking scary." It's like, "Oh, John, he's okay. He's our guy. Yeah, I know he's scary. I don't even like walking by my door, in and out, because I see him out of the corner of my eye. No, he's good though." And he's like, "All right, if you say so." But I still thought it was in my imagination until years later, at age 17. A number of years had elapsed. I had it turns out, I suppose, very momentously decided that I need to let this mad monk who I feel inside me out. And thus I was like, well, I need to meditate 6 hours a day, because what the hell am I doing here otherwise? I'm just dicking around. And so I turned my room into an ashram and started giving away all my possessions. Like a lot of changes were happening. And so as I made that shift, I had 3 mornings in a row, which I thought was I think set up to make my rational mind understand this probably is real stuff that's going on, in which I woke up in a state of sleep paralysis, and the first morning a spirit being who was a stern Edwardian lady who I'd seen before in my room walked from my closet door creepily right behind my head. I'm like, oh, I keep telling these spirits, like, you got to understand how not to be creepy. Like, and I tried to turn through my sleep paralysis to like look at her, and I was able to do that before, falling asleep, because it was just exhausting to break through the sleep paralysis. She was stern, but I knew she had a good heart. The next day, a warm, he looked Mexican fellow with a garish sweater with the types of colors that were popular in the 50s or 70s. He had a kinder face. He did the same maneuver from the closet door, standing right behind me. I was able to more successfully break through my paralysis and have some telepathy with him. And he said, "Don't mind the lady. She's just, my words. She has resting Puritan face." Basically, like, she's good, she's fine. It's like, I knew she's fine. She's just so scary. He said, yeah. He said, yeah, she is scary to me too. And then he basically said, we're leaving now. It was been, apparently I hired more people than I knew. He said, we're leaving now. It was lovely to be in the room with you and relay her message.
They were aiding.
They were apparently aiding, and so then I had a third morning where I woke up, instead of the being coming from the closet, and I had no paralysis. The third morning, I just woke up in the most sort of like liminal, mystical, like my body felt like somebody had been pouring honey all over it. There was the fellow by the door that I hired years ago, and standing in the place where apparently he'd been standing for about 10 years of a human life. And he, instead of being only a pitch black entity, half of him was pitch black, half of him had a human face.
Wow.
And a human body. And on the half that was a human, there was a tear streaming down from his eye, down his cheek. And he said, like, "You won't need me anymore, boss. I'm going to go be a human." But he basically told me, since you've turned your room into an ashram and your life is dedicated to basically this path that you put yourself on, a higher order of protection is coming in, and we won't be needed anymore. And we said our goodbye, and I was crying because of his emotionality that was going on, and so that was like, at that moment I'd still always been skeptical, still am, but at that moment I was like, oh shit, 3 in a row. I barely ever have sleep paralysis. 2 mornings with the same spirit, and then there's this guy. Okay, something must have been true to all the stuff that I'd been experiencing this whole time. It wasn't me just coping with whatever.
I'm just trying to imagine how you were coping, kind of as a kid, going to school and having the sort of everyday life, the mundane life, and needing to do homework and needing to function and have friendships at school and things like that, and then kind of coming home and coping with all of this that the external world certainly don't expect, certainly don't encourage. It sounds like you had a wonderful family that were able to hold that for you. And how was that for you to kind of flip between the two?
Oh, I mean, I was looking back, I'd say I was living a double life, and was very comfortable with it. There's, I think, a reason. All the Scorpio in my chart, I see similarities with Batman's psyche. And but I loved my school life. I mean, actually, at first I didn't, but I hated the social aspect of it because it was just
weird.
Maybe a believer in reincarnation. I was like, how do all these other 6-year-olds have such a cruel streak? My first hypothesis was other lives. They're coveted hot. But I turned out that even though early on I was like, oh man, language acquisition is sketchy. It's probably part of the problem that all these adults have. Oh man, I don't want to learn how to read and write. I want to draw pictures. I want to, go, play out in the fields and with the trees and my imagination. And then I was like, okay, I guess I got to do it because my parents and, okay. But very quickly, I found that I liked scholastic stuff and it was enjoyable and it turned out to be good at it. And so, that like, it was weird. Like I could put the whole, what was going on with the ghost kind of down quite a bit and not even talk about it and just try to awkwardly attempt to make friends
Yeah.
and I don't like all the kids develop that old ego, and that was, age 7 to 13. That was how I was coasting basically, doing that.
I think it sounds like your humor got you through a lot of it as well, because I can sense, that sense of, I think humor can get you through a lot of things, and just the craziness of it if you're coping with, those difficult relationship dynamics as a little person. And it's really hard, especially if you're very sensitive. It's just awful, isn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was actually quite awful. What would it have been? 1990. Some fall of 1990 was definitely a nadir. So as was fall of 1991, these years were not like the happiest. I was questioning whether I was in the right, had incarnated. Even though I would use those words, it was just funny. I didn't really know them, but they would come to my mind. I'd have these quiet thoughts rise up. Did you incarnate at the right time? And that was an open question until I came home and funnily enough, I watched 2 music videos back to back. It was Enigma's "The Return to Innocence," followed by Nirvana. And I was like, oh, somehow those 2 things. It's like, oh yeah, it was the right time. I don't know why those might have been my markers, and because I was getting awful sick of Ronald Reagan and all that kind of stuff.
Did that even happen, or did we dream it?
Oh yeah, it happened. I was done with Reagan and like hair bands.
Yeah,
even young. But once Enigma and Nirvana came on, I was like, oh, thank God. And so often running.
1990, early 1990s was potent. It was a potent time. It flipped a lot of things, and thank goodness for those times.
I feel so blessed to actually have really grown up in the 90s. That was in the time, in the place that I did. Beautiful, especially in a very veil-thinned Neptunian town. A more astrological language. The 90s for the viewers was marked by a every 170 year conjunction of Neptune and Uranus, and so a lot of the cultural aspects that were so peculiar, I have to say, to the 90s were dominated by that. From Enya to the X-Files are very Neptunian sorts of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was growing up. I had an alien encounter, which I didn't even think was real. I didn't think it was not real, but it was just so strange that I was like, this is stranger than the ghosts. Like them I'm used to. But it was one night in 94 or 95. The tribe that lived in my area, sadly, they were moved to Kansas, which is so cruel. But they would come back, send people back, and they would do a powwow. I think they still do it, called Honor the Firekeepers. And so the Potawatomi, representatives of the Potawatomi would come. And I loved going to that thing. They played in this sort of a natural amphitheater about a mile away from my house, drumming and dancing and singing through the night. And so I couldn't stay as late as they were doing it. So that meant that once a summer, I could go to sleep hearing the distant sounds of the singing and drumming. And that was some of the best, some of the most meditative and interesting sleeps I would be able to enter in my childhood. And so one night I went to sleep in this state, but then must have been about an hour later, I woke up with a massive pain in the right side of my head and my temple, as if something were trying to bore its way in. And I was thinking, well, I'm 10, 11, I'm very thin, and I'm in good shape. I'm probably not having a stroke. Am I having a stroke? Is this what a stroke feels like? Were my thoughts. And I was like, maybe I'll look in the direction of where this is coming from. So I turned my body to where my second floor window was. And to my very bizarre surprise, being in a second floor window, there were two classic gray aliens floating in the space outside of my window. And this was really weird. And one of them was tapping its finger onto the window, and I could hear it. And their bodies were casting shadows, and I was noting all this stuff because I was saying, like, am I dreaming or is this real?
Right.
So I was in the moment looking for like places where it's congruent with normal reality. Mm-hmm. And my neighbor in the next house had a big sort of motion detector floodlight that would come on, so it was very well lit. I mean, and it was a bright moon in the sky as well. So they had shadows, and I could see the shadows. They had depth, they had dimension, mm-hmm. and I could hear the sound of the finger on the window. And then the strange thing was I saw little not microwave, but heat lines, mm-hmm. kind of distortion lines coming from the head of the other one to basically my head area. And then I just got really pissed off because I was like, God, I'm not having a stroke. This without knowing to do it, a big beam of stuff came out of my stomach and out of my forehead and it went into their head. And I decided I would kind of attack them. Mm-hmm. And so I bored myself into the one's mind that was going into me, and I started basically pulling wires. And then to my surprise, I found that I was in a giant, vast space, like not the size of a little head, but like massive. And I realized, oh my God, these beings have a hive mind. Mm-hmm. These are not like individuals using like a singular volition. Yeah. But somehow that gave me a little bit of compassion for them. I was like, oh, they're more like robots in a weird way, or collective intelligence. And so then I was basically spouting all this stuff telepathically that, I mean, I was just riffing, I guess, but it was weird because the things I said was, you idiots, I'm to be untouched. Just because I'm in a different body now doesn't mean the treaty's any different. You need to be reading my basic energetic signature. And I was basically sending my complaints to the manager, as it were. And then it's like the manager, in quotes, spoke back and basically said, like, oh yeah, our bad. Sorry about that. And then I felt like I'd been heard, and I left the mind space. I was back in my body. They're still there, and then they're disengaged, and they were floating into the space between our houses. And like I got up, I walked around, I did more reality testing, as if that wouldn't it still wouldn't have reached my skeptical mind, but I did reality testing. My sister was in her room. I could hear, either, like her tape player, her radio playing something.
Yeah.
I walked to where I could hear what was going on downstairs, and my mother and father were watching one of their late night talk shows that I watched. It was Letterman or Leno or something. This is the 90s. And I could hear that. Everything seemed normal. And I walked back, went back to bed, went to sleep. But for some reason, the fact that these were floating gray aliens, why would they float? I can't believe that they could float, and so I figured, probably just a dream, and until years later, I was reading some accounts of abductees, and a number of them said, like, oh, they floated outside my window and then were able to come in, would go right through the wall and then take me out. And that became such a common report from these people. They're like, oh shit. Mm-hmm. So,
And how old were you at that point?
It was 94 or 95. I don't remember which year it was. Mm-hmm. So I was either 10 or 11. It was in the summer. So I have a fall birthday. So it was 10 or 11.
Yeah.
One of those years. Yeah.
Because what strikes me is interesting is, a lot of people say that, because you had an experience with what you described as gnomes as well. Mm. And, a lot of people say, drawing on largely, Jacques Vallée's Passport to Magonia, that aliens, what we see as aliens, are just an updated our perspective of what fairies were to our, to generations gone before in the past. And I wondered what you think about the energetic difference of being in the presence of, say, for instance, ghosts and aliens, and then gnomes. And maybe you can tell us about your gnome experience as well. Yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Well, to me, I mean, I'm sure there's probably some cases where, people, encountered an alien or an interdimensional being or something in that classification and thought they were seeing a fairy. But I do think they're distinct beings.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and with different timbre and a different feel and different feelings, which remain consistent from one to the next. I mean, those like grays, which I think are like cybernetic. They felt like part machine, part biological. It felt really interesting to me, actually. That was just like a weird feel. I mean, that was probably that's not very descriptive, is it? It did feel like non-human in a way. Ghosts are just like humans who are stuck in a telenovela. Still, no. With a lot of the ghosts, there was something about their presence was so dramatic that it was keeping them confused or earthbound. So it was like being a therapist and having to deal with very human things just kind of turned up. Like somebody who shot themselves. That's a very turned up, intense moment, and there's something about that as a little kid I would feel with these people who would come in. So that that like opera, like drama, very, very human. For me, the celestials, as I'll call them, or the elementals, did accord to a lot of notions that, like, well, there's water spirits and there's some tree beings, and maybe every flower has an attendant elemental. There would be, for instance, with my lake, which is where I ultimately felt a lot of things in the water. So we'll get to the gnomes, but the lake, at some point after learning my meditation practice, revealed itself to me as like a collection of the most wonderful alive beings I'd ever seen. It was like each wave could manifest like a little bit of singing intelligence, and basically for me, and I know in Celtic and Norse legend, they're often naughtier and don't have great intents. For me, they were just like bliss and joy balls. For the most part, maybe I just got lucky. I didn't sense that there was any even malintent, like let's drag them down to the bottom and drown them, or something like that. There was such a, oh my God, you can hear us vibe to them. Like, oh my God, will you listen to our songs? And there was a sense of being in a sort of a symbiotic relationship with them, where my positive regard and my own open heart would sort of please them, and their beauty and their sort of transcendental intelligence would please me. Same with the trees. The trees would teach me about. They were the most instructive ones, like tree fairies, or maybe this is where we get into gnomes, because I would sometimes see little men or women or sort of neuter spirits come out of the base of a tree and just basically smile. We didn't have like deep interactions or prolonged ones. They would often smile, and then they would they could see that I was tuning into like the whole tree in a way, and that's what they wanted me to do. Actually, is because I at a certain point, maybe 18 or something, didn't happen all the time. It's like if I had a stressed out day, the doors of perception would be much more closed, right? But on days where the meditation went really well, the doors of perception would be really open, and then the trees would be basically singing songs of appreciation, gratitude, and love to the universe. And it's basically they wanted me in on their song, and they were trying to teach me how to evolve. It was like a singing practice or music practice. Is that songs going on all the time, anywhere, everywhere, and they would love to take on more pupils. And sort of share what's going on. They're like, oh my God, hey! Some of them even kind of said they knew me. They're like, yeah, we've been watching you walk this street back and forth, the last 18 years. It's really great that you're you're in the conversation again. That's yeah.
Yeah, that really kind of resonates with sometimes with my own experience of trees, and also from what I've heard from other people too, is that they're such amazing beings, and they, we can interact with them, and they certainly interact with us. And you can have that relationship with them. I love the idea of the kind of the singing. That's really beautiful. And would you physically go to a tree and sing and hang out in these places?
Have done.
Trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I like to do that. Some of them said, "Well, that's not necessary. You can just do, internal."
Yeah.
But certainly I would go and make it a vocalized thing as well. The gnomish experience came in a forest on a hilltop in Nesquin, Oregon. I had just moved into I'd say the strongest gnomic experience, or what I should call them. Just moved into a beautiful monastery in an old second growth forest with interesting building, and there was like a lot of walking paths and trails that you could take up there. And so I walked into this one clearing, and I wanted to put I kept being filled with visions of putting a beautiful yurt or a cottage or something in the middle of this clearing. I look over to my right, and in the sort of the dawn light, in the trees were these basically like humans who were not quite. Most of them were not quite as tall as a normal human would be, and I was just, they weren't looking at me. I was just watching them, and they were building they had their own little town and little city in there, and it was a bit more like I had a little screen open up, and I was seeing like a completely different band of reality, and everything was quite shiny there, which was interesting. Like there was sort of an internal light which was shining out of all these beings and their little houses and the trees which were on their side of the forest. And then I kept looking at them. One of them seemed to look back. I'm not quite sure its intent, but it seemed to look back at me and kind of give a smile and a wink, and then it faded. So that. But what I gathered from that short little interaction with that last being again was sort of a communication to my heart, which was like, I'm like, we're really glad that you can see us. We're really glad. And then it was basically like, yes, we would like we would like you to put a yurt there. We would like you to do that. But I was like, well, I'm 18. I've got no money. I don't own that property. Not gonna happen. But nothing profound about the structure of the universe imparted to me there. Just again, this kind of gladness that we should have communication between these various layers, which I think our world is really composed of.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what you feel about the layers. In fact, layers of existence. In terms of your own understanding, just in how it feels to you.
Well, I'm not so human. I'm not like a human chauvinist. So I keep it open. You'll find in a lot of traditions where they're like, humans are in the middle, which may be true. It may be true, but I don't know. It's like, how should I know it? I'd have to find both ends and be sure that they were both ends, and then take a tape measure. But what I gathered from that demon that worked for me, and what I've gathered from, I'd say maybe some angelic experiences as well, from different angles, from both sides. They thought that it was kind of a good deal to come and be a Homo sapien, to come and be, or a similar body in this dimensional reality where you could have self-consciousness. The sense I got was that it provided expedited evolutionary opportunities. That was the sense I got from the demon. Anyways, he's like, oh my God, you can just plow through. so many things. And I think it is because there is a balance of pleasure and pain, ability to feel these things. That there is also ephemerality to a certain degree built into it. That there's kind of a positive pressure to shit or get off the pot, and sing the song of your try to sing the song of your soul with this kind of resistance that's there, and that perhaps doesn't exist at wherever the hell that dark entity was spending its previous time, wherever some of these angels that would also kind of visit from time to time in life. I don't know. I've certainly read lots of books, and I could spout what those books say. But as sort of a person, it's like, well, could be so. With these other beings, I do think that actually something from the Rig Veda. It's a big corpus, of course. I'm obviously cherry picking a particular translation here, but one translation refers to human beings as praisers. Those who praise, those who appreciate, that there's some sort of importance to some of the import of the human being is to be an appreciative witness, is to as far as the celestials are concerned. I'm not quite sure where the demons are concerned here, but if we just stick to celestials and elemental beings, to be somebody, to allow our hearts to be open and experience awe, which I think in its own way is kind of a pathway to transcendent, non-local, vast states of consciousness. Being in a state of love or gratitude or profound appreciation has this tendency to erode the hard boundaries between self and world, and between this realm and other realms. And I feel like a gardener. The same thing that feeds my love for gardening. I've been a cook as well. There's a natural love to nurture things. And to grow things, and to support things in achieving their, I suppose their full flowering. I think that's a potential aspect. I don't think the only one, but a potential gift or trajectory of being a human is to be in position to allow all sorts of things to grow to their size, including the human being itself in that process. I do think of it as like a wonderful service to be involved in, not to be so self-centered about, I have to develop me, but to be in a position where you're like, no, I'm gonna get out of the way and play a role, play a part, and at the end of the day, we might not know it, but that's actually probably also the thing that makes your own individual self bloom to its acme level. So I think we're meant to also I don't know if we're in the exact middle of things, whatever that is, but I think we're meant to be these interesting agents that can that can connect these different parts of the spectrum together, just in some ways just by interacting and being aware of them. In that way.
Yeah, thank you. So something about the sort of suffering of being on Earth and coming here and living through an experience here that can be hard. I'm thinking about that demon, coming here and, as you say, sort of like hurtling through it, gaining momentum about being here and kind of physicality in this world, but then also the key being, recognizing the divine and working with the divine, and, as you say, kind of preparing the groundwork for something else to come through. And in order to do that, then opening ourselves up to the divine, to allow those energies to move through us, to move through whatever it is we're working through in this world.
Yeah. I mean, I see this whole world as a song or a series of songs that simply want to be sung. And in some ways, I remove the value judgment off. That makes some people uncomfortable. Maybe it's not true, but I often think of everything that happens as something coming out of the divine imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that includes like the worst sorts of things that we can conceive. Again, I understand why that can be an unpopular opinion. Basically, I think my work with work, I suppose, the work I had to do primarily as a young guy with spirits, and then as an adult, as an astrologer, as a meditation teacher, it all seems to be about the importance of having the soul song be sung, the importance of we're weird creatures my cat, my deceased cat George. He had no problem singing his soul song. It was he's just completely there, completely present. Every day. Mr. Natural, really. We seem to have an interesting hang up where it's like we've been taught to resist so much all these things, and I have to say it invariably the way to happiness is to learn how to get out of the own way and step fully into the part in this play that we've been asked to be in.
Thank you. Would you? I know it's everyone's got their own trip kind of thing, and they have to find the things that work for them. And so one thing, or number of things, don't necessarily help every single person. But what would you? So I really hear the kind of tuning into that people should at least start to try to tune in and figure out what feels right for them, and as you say, kind of getting out of their own way. What do you feel are, say, the three things that may aid folk in that?
Most humans, in no order necessarily of importance, but most humans, some kind of meditation practice. Some of, I think I had success both with like hard-ass ascetic practices, which I don't necessarily recommend, and then much more success with effortless practice. I think probably most people, if they're doing meditation, it's better to have a practice where they're not trying to make their mind quiet and not trying to push out other thoughts and sort of force concentration. But some kind of meditation practice is probably going to do most people very well, because that's just working at one of the more fundamental layers of tension that it's otherwise difficult to get to. And basically, I see this almost like a plumbing problem. That our pipes have just gotten too contracted, or we've got some barnacles going in there that are basically stopping the flow of life. So we need to do things that basically fundamentally relax and remove the accretions to the flow of our own life. And that's one. And so that's one of the chairs of the leg. The other thing, in addition to that, is something that also some sort of body work. Actually, what I mean by that is things like hatha yoga or qigong, or something that has more of a somatic focus, specifically somatic focus in the practice. I would add with the pure meditative practice, just to make sure that there's an all around development that's going on, and the body gets the care that it needs. Mainly, the body for many of us becomes our bodies are actually wonderful things. And unfortunately, they become sort of like the dumping grounds for our like unresolved psychological tensions, and we don't notice it until a few years down the road when it starts to complain. But so the body in any kind of meditative process, if you're doing 6 hours a day of meditation, for instance, you're going to want to do an hour of yoga. To just to make it a smoother ride, because there's going to be all sorts of dust that gets kicked out in the process, and it's why have it feel more challenging than it should? So, yoga, qigong, forest bathing, Other stuff becomes, I think, those to me are almost like universally prescriptive or close to. Other stuff around that becomes more suited to one person to the next. Like, for instance, some people I know, God, they if they take voice lessons, for instance, or they practice singing, that turns into an important part of an actual spiritual path. Because some people's tensions might really be running through the voice box and through the diaphragm and the chest. Other people need to be doing some kind of aggressive sport. There might be such a warrior presence in there that let's get them doing anything from rugby to pickleball. Whatever the joints can take. Other people prosper from of writing sessions every day. There's got to be, and so like, and now we're getting into normal activities. Many people prosper from all sorts of combination of them. But yeah, some kind of meditation, something for the body, and then something that an activity that really kind of how should we say, like vibrates with one's guiding archetypes. We can put it like that.
Makes your heart sing.
Makes your heart sing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. And I suppose I like the idea of the blocked pipes, because in the meditation, you'll probably, once you start to do that fairly regularly, you start to get a sense of what's going on in your body as well, and or you get a sense of, oh, it might feel quite nice to write today. Whereas if you're so busy and just doing this and that and just getting through the day, you'd actually get a chance to actually stop and hear that your body would like to go for a walk in this lovely park today, or whatever it is that we feel drawn to do. So yeah, that is really, that's great. Thank you. But it's been really amazing to talk. I feel like there's lots we didn't get to as well. So come back and have another chat, and because I would love to hear about what you've been experiencing at the place you're living at too.
Oh God, yeah.
So we must have another chat another time. And what are you kind of going off, and when you're traveling around, what are you doing? Are you kind of offering workshops, or are you just traveling?
We're coming to the UK tomorrow, actually, for a month of June of 2025, and we'll be teaching a class in Stroud on the solstice weekend, and we'll be teaching a class in North Yorkshire the weekend after that. Meditation classes, and then the first weekend we're going to be my wife and I will both be teaching a short little workshop, and I'll be giving a talk at the Mindful Man Festival that's held on the Isle of Man.
Oh, fantastic!
And so it's kind of a little bit of a trip through some parts of the British Isles, and those are the main events, and then the rest of the time it's exploring, and sometimes people contact us to do one-to-one astrological or intuitive readings and stuff like that.
Brilliant. So how should people contact you? What's the best way that people can kind of find out what you're up to and what you're doing?
Oh yeah, via the websites of my meditation website would have our meditation classes listed on it, and that is www.ascension-meditation.com. And then my astrological website is a really long name, actually. It's www.awakenedlightastrology.com. And so just sending an email through any of the contact portals will be successful.
So I wanted to just ask you what it is you're going to be doing in Stroud.
Well, we're going to be teaching basically the meditation practice that changed my life. And I had been, a zealous, teen monk, I'd call myself, at home doing really hard ass concentration stuff. And then after, well, I won't get into the whole story. Then I learned this amazing effortless meditation practice called the Ishaya's Ascension Meditation, which is interesting also because at the time I was doing mostly Sanskrit. I was kind of a Sanskrit chauvinist in a way. And this practice is actually primarily in the first language, whatever the first language of any given practitioner is. And it's a meditation practice that incorporates appreciation, gratitude, and love into its techniques. And it's bizarre that it works so well. And it's basically a way of well, after years of practicing, I basically see it as actually a series of basically poems that are within all of life anyways. That's how I see all of mantra practice, whether it's Sanskrit or even using Hebrew as a sacred language. I see all of these practices as simply ways of getting deeply in touch with vectors of expansion and transcendence and bliss that are already inherent. And so we'll be teaching people how to do the practice and doing lots of group meditation with it, and basically, marinating in what I find is a extremely easy and potent way of experiencing samadhi, or said another way, experiencing the now, or presence, or a million different words for the same universal human experience. And so that's what we're having a weekend course about 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on a Saturday and a Sunday, doing that. Of course, we also talk about other things like the healing of the energetic channels that goes along with doing this meditation practice, or the I'd have to say the naturalistic shadow work. I like to think of it as shadow play. Maybe that's because I'm a Scorpio. But the kind of the reconciliation of all sorts of psychological debris that happens when one engages in a sufficiently potent meditation practice. And so basically we try to take a whole weekend to do it, because we want to have very, very self-sufficient practitioners by the time that the class is over, ready to handle all sorts of the interesting experiences that might arise with practice. I will also say that in terms of this audience, of doing that meditation practice was a squeegee to my third eye, using Bill Hicks's language here. It was absolutely re-enchanted the cosmos for me, fairly immediately. That doesn't happen with everybody. We all have different orders of operation in terms of spiritual unfolding. But in this case, anytime silence was touched, the heart was open to age 3 levels, which for me were pretty open.
Yeah.
And so this also is a path that has what I'd say a lot of Shakti in it as well, that opens us to the sort of the flowing love of the divine, or the Ananda, the bliss of those aspects fairly easily. So yes, I'd say it's a path to enlightenment. It's also a path to enchantment, and I don't necessarily see those as different categories all the time. So
Thank you.
that's what we're doing in Stroud.
Yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, all of that, the opening of the third eye, shadow work's really important at this time, and the meditations, immersing yourself in and learning what works for you with meditation. Yeah, it all sounds like a tonic for these times. So yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for making your time to tell me all your experiences, how things start out, as I say, which feels quite familiar to many of us, this beginning of an awareness that this is all just part of life, and managing to not lose that aspect of yourself through school, and, being quite clear about, no, I'm going to have this ashram in my room, and then, working with these beings. It's been quite amazing. So yeah, there's so much that I'm thinking about here. And I know that people that are watching will feel the same. So if people want to get in touch with me or you and ask some questions, and perhaps come back on another time, and, we'll go again. So yeah, all the best.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thanks.
Great to be in touch.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. We'll talk about etheric jaguars the next time.
but yeah, we will. Thanks so much for listening and watching. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider joining us on Patreon for dozens more episodes of unreleased bonus content, monthly online events, and a private chat. We are a warm, supportive community, and it really helps to support the project. Find us on patreon.com/the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast.
SpectreVision Radio.